In the previous video of structure of an atom, we studied the discovery of electrons, protons and neutrons. We also studied the Rutherford's atomic model and its drawback. In this video, we are going to study about the Bohr's atomic model and atomic orbitals and quantum numbers. At times, when different models of atomic structures were being put forth, some results were obtained from the studies of interaction of radiation with matter, and this particular thing was required to be correlated with the atomic structure, and that is when Niels Bohr utilized these results to get over the drawbacks of the Rutherford's atomic model. Before moving on to the Bohr's atomic model, let us understand the line emission spectrum of hydrogen. When a substance is irradiated with light, it absorbs energy. Irradiated means it is a process of subjecting an object to radiation. So when a substance is irradiated, the atoms, molecules or ions which absorb the radiations are said to be excited. Now what is the meaning of excited here? So these substances, they are going to have more energy when compared to their ground state. Ground state is the lowest energy state of that substance. However, heating can also result in an excited state. So when an excited species gives away the absorbed energy in the form of radiation, then the process is called as emission of radiation. And when the spectrum of this emitted radiation is recorded, it is called as the emission spectrum. Of all the elements, hydrogen has the simplest emission spectrum. This is because hydrogen has only one electron in its orbit and has the lowest possible energy. When electric discharge is passed through the gaseous hydrogen, it is going to emit radiation. The hydrogen emission spectrum, it was studied by 5 scientists in late 19th century. They recorded the emission spectra of hydrogen in different regions of electromagnetic radiation, and they observed that this spectra, it was not continuous and it comprised of a series of lines corresponding to different frequencies. Here is a picture which shows the emission line spectrum of hydrogen. You can see that first the lines, they are closer and closer, and then there is a space that is coming, and then again the lines start to appear. Let us now study the Bohr's model for hydrogen atom. Niels Bohr in the year 1913 put forth his postulates about the atomic model for hydrogen. The postulates put forward by him were based on quantum theory, wave-particle duality of electromagnetic radiation and the emission line spectra of hydrogen. So Bohr's model of hydrogen atom is based on the following postulates. The first postulate is the electron in the hydrogen atom can move around the nucleus in one of the many possible circular paths of fixed radius and energy. These paths, they are called as orbits, stationary states or allowed energy states. These orbits are arranged concentrically around the nucleus in an increasing order of energy. So what does this postulate mean? In hydrogen atom, there is only one electron, and this electron, it moves around the nucleus in a number of circular paths. So that path was not actually fixed, and that circular path would have fixed radius and energy, and these paths were called as orbits, stationary states or allowed energy states. And how are these orbits arranged around the nucleus? In a concentrical manner, or you can say in a circular form. The second postulate is the energy of an electron in the orbit does not change with time. However, the electron will move from a lower stationary state to a higher stationary state if and when the required amount of energy is absorbed by the electron. Energy is emitted when electron moves from a higher stationary state to a lower one, and the energy change does not take place in a continuous manner. This postulate means that when that electron is moving in the orbit, the energy of that electron is not going to change with time. However, If the electron wants to go from a lower stationary state to a higher stationary state, then it will have to absorb energy. And when it comes from the higher energy state to the lower energy state, it is going to give away the energy. But this energy changes, they do not take place in a continuous manner. The third postulate is the frequency of radiation absorbed or emitted when transition occurs between two stationary states that differ in energy by delta E. It is given by the expression V, which is the wave number, is equal to delta E upon H, and delta E is nothing but the difference between the energy, so it will be E2 minus E1 divided by H. Now here E1 and E2, they are the energies of the lower and higher allowed energy states respectively. H is the Planck's constant. This expression is called as the Bohr's frequency rule. So in this postulate, we have to calculate the difference between the energy. That is, when the electron moves from a lower state to higher state by absorbing energy, and when the electron comes from a higher state to the lower state by releasing energy. The fourth postulate is the angular momentum of an electron in a given stationary state can be expressed as mvr is equal to n into h divided by 2 pi, and you can substitute 1, 2, 3 in place of n. Thus, an electron can move only in those orbits for which its angular momentum is integral multiple of h divided by 2 pi. Thus, only certain fixed orbits are allowed here. Let us now watch a video to understand the Bohr's model for hydrogen atom.
Bohr's model of atom. Various models of the atom have been proposed by eminent scientists over the years. These models have increased our understanding of the atomic structure. Among these models, Rutherford suggested that electrons revolve around the nucleus in well-defined orbits, but there was a problem with this. The motion of electrons in Rutherford's model was unstable because any charged particle moving in a circular path emits electromagnetic radiation. Thus, the electrons would lose energy and fall into the nucleus, making the atom highly unstable. Then, which would be a better model of an atom? To overcome the objections against Rutherford's model of atom, Niels Bohr in 1913 proposed a new atom model. What does this model propose? It first proposes that electrons revolve around the nucleus in specific orbits, and these orbits are associated with definite energies and are called shells or energy levels. These orbits or shells are represented by the letters K, L, M, N. The maximum number of electrons that can be accommodated in a particular orbit is 2n to the power of 2, where n is the number of the orbit. Thus, K shell would have 2 electrons, L shell would have 8 electrons, M shell would have 18 electrons, and N shell would have 32 electrons, and so on. That said, what does this model next propose? It next proposes that the maximum number of electrons that can be accommodated in the outermost level is 8. And finally, it says that the orbit closest to the nucleus has minimum energy and the orbit farthest has the maximum energy. Well then, does an electron radiate energy by itself? Since electrons move in a particular orbit, they do not radiate energy by themselves. What happens instead is when an atom absorbs energy, the electrons get excited and jump into the next higher energy level. The electron can radiate energy and return to its original state or drop down to the next energy level. Bohr's model works well for simple atoms and is easy to understand. It is one among the atomic structures still in use today, and the other being the quantum mechanical model. Things to remember. In 1913, a Danish physicist, Niels Bohr, proposed an atomic model known as Bohr's atomic model. In an atom, the electrons revolve around the nucleus in definite energy levels called orbits or shells. The maximum number of electrons that can be accommodated in a particular orbit is 2n to the power of 2. The maximum number of electrons that can be accommodated in the outermost shell is 8. The orbit closest to the nucleus has minimum energy and the orbit farthest has maximum energy. Electrons are excited to the higher energy levels by absorbing energy and return to the lower energy levels by radiating energy.
So I hope after watching this video you are clear with the concept of Bohr's model for hydrogen atom. Let us now study the limitations of Bohr's model. Bohr's atomic model failed to explain the finer details of the hydrogen atom spectrum when observed in sophisticated spectroscope experiment. It was also not able to explain the spectrum of atoms of other elements other than hydrogen. It could also not explain the splitting of spectral lines in the presence of magnetic field or electric field. Bohr's atomic model also failed to explain how atoms combine to form molecules by chemical bonds. Let us now study about atomic orbitals and quantum numbers. The first quantum number is principal quantum number and it is denoted by small letter n. This is an atom. The blue circular part is the nucleus and then you have the different orbits. The orbit which is closest to the nucleus is the K shell, then comes the L shell, then M, N, P, Q and so on. The value of the principal quantum number n is equal to 1 for the shell K. For shell L it becomes n is equal to 2. For shell M it becomes n is equal to 3. For shell N it becomes n is equal to 4. With the increase of principal quantum number, the distance from the nucleus and the size of the shell increases and also the energy increases. If you want to calculate the number of electrons that are present in each orbit or shell, will be calculated using the formula 2n square. So let us solve for K shell. So for K shell, n is equal to 1. So using the formula 2 into n square will be 2 into 1 raised to 2, which is going to give us 2. So there will be 2 electrons present in the K shell. For L shell, n is equal to 2. So again using the formula 2n square, we get 2 into 2 raised to 2. So that will be equal to 2 into 4. So 4 2s is 8. So there will be 8 electrons present in the L shell. Similarly, you can calculate for M, N, P, Q shells. The next quantum number is the azimuthal quantum number. It is denoted by small letter L. It is also called as subsidiary quantum number. The azimuthal quantum number L ranges from 0 to n minus 1. For the K shell, we know that n is equal to 1, which means that it contains only one subshell. So the value of L is equal to 0 and that subshell is S. For L shell, the principal quantum number n is equal to 2. After putting the formula n minus 1, we get 2 minus 1, which is equal to 1, and it corresponds to the P shell. For M shell, n is equal to 3, hence taking the formula n minus 1, so in place of n we'll put 3, so 3 minus 1 is going to give us the answer 2. So it is going to correspond to the D shell. For N shell, the value of principal quantum number n is equal to 4. Hence putting the formula n minus 1, we get 4 minus 1, which is equal to 3, and that corresponds to the F subshell. When L is equal to 0, it corresponds to S subshell, 1 corresponds to P subshell, 2 corresponds to D subshell, and 3 corresponds to f subshell respectively. The next quantum number is the magnetic orbital quantum number. It is denoted by small letter ml. This quantum number gives information about the spatial orientation of the orbitals in a given subshell, as in how the orbitals are arranged in the subshell. The formula used to calculate the magnetic orbital quantum number is 2l plus 1. When l is equal to 0, if we substitute this in the formula, we will get 2 into 0 plus 1, which will correspond to 1. Hence, the value of magnetic quantum number will be equal to 0. When L is equal to 1, we get the answer as 2 into 1 plus 1, which will be equal to 3. Hence, the magnetic orbital quantum number will be equal to -1, 0 and plus 1. When L is equal to 2, again we are going to use the formula 2L plus 1. So substituting the value of L, we get 2 into 2 plus 1. So it will be equal to 5. Hence the magnetic orbital quantum number will be equal to -2, -1, 0, plus 1 and plus 2. So in total of 5 magnetic orbital quantum number. When L is equal to 3, again use the formula 2L plus 1. So 2 into 3 plus 1, we get the answer as 7. So we need to have 7 values of M. So it will be -3, -2, -1, 0, plus 1, plus 2 and plus 3. The next quantum number is the electron spin quantum number, and it is denoted by ms. This quantum number explains the spin state of the electron in an orbital. We know that an electron spins around its axis, and that is why it imparts spin angular momentum to the electron. The two orientations which the spin angular momentum of an electron can take place, it gives rise to the spin states which can be easily distinguished from each other by the spin quantum number. So it is either plus half or minus half. Now, when the arrow is pointing upwards, it has the value of plus half, and when it is pointing downwards, it is with the value minus half. Always keep in mind, an orbital can accommodate maximum of 2 electrons, and they should always be in opposite spin, that is pointing upwards and pointing downwards, like this. This is also called as the Pauli's exclusion principle. We will be studying about this concept in detail as we move forward in this chapter. So this was all about the quantum numbers. Let us now study the shapes of atomic orbitals. First is the shape of s orbital. S orbitals can accommodate electrons with the value L is equal to 0. And these orbitals, they are present in every orbit starting from the first orbit. Orbitals in which the principal quantum number n is equal to 1 and the azimuthal quantum number L is equal to 0 are present are called as 1s orbital. So as you can see here, all the s orbitals, they are spherical in shape. However, the size of the sphere increases with the value of n, that is the principal quantum number. The s orbits, they are symmetrically spherical because the probability of finding the electron around the nucleus is same in all the directions. When the principal quantum number will be n is equal to 2, then we will get the 2s orbital. So this is how the 2s orbital looks like. This is the node here. Node is the space around the nucleus where the probability of finding the electron is minimum or 0. Next is the shape of p orbital. The p sublevels, they begin from the second orbit. For p sublevel, L is equal to 1, which indicates that it has 3 values with the magnetic quantum number m is equal to -1, 0 and plus 1. We have already studied this while learning the quantum numbers. and these are designated as px, py and pz. This depends upon the axis in which the electron density is present. For px orbital, the electron density is maximum on the x-axis. For the py orbital, the electron density is concentrated on the y-axis, and for pz orbital, the electron density is concentrated on the z-axis. Each p orbital, they have two lobes which are separated by the nodal plane. Nodal plane is the plane where the probability of finding electrons is minimum or 0. The nodal plane for px will be y and z axis. For py, the nodal plane will be x and z axis, and for pz, the nodal plane will be x and y axis respectively. The p orbitals which are present in the p sublevel have the same shape, size and energy. However, they have different orientations because the value of m differs for different p orbitals, that is -1, 0 and +1. Also, these p orbitals, they are perpendicular to each other at an angle of 90 degree. Next is the shape of d orbitals. D orbitals begin from the third orbit where n, that is principal quantum number, is equal to 3. For D sublevel, the azimuthal quantum number L is equal to 2, which indicates that each of the D sublevel have 5 orbitals with the magnetic quantum number m equal to -2, -1, 0, +1 and +2. Hence, these orbitals are designated as dxy, dyz, dxz, dx square minus y square and dz square. All the orbitals except dz square orbital have double dumbbell shape. Each d orbital have 4 lobes which is separated by 2 nodal planes. In case of dxy, dyz and dxz orbitals, lobes are present in between the corresponding axes. For example, in dxy orbitals, the lobes will be present in between x and y axis. However, in case of dx square minus y square and dz square, the lobes are present along the axis. Hence, dxy orbital contains yz and zx as the nodal planes. For dyz, the nodal planes are xy and zx. For dzx, the nodal planes are xy and yz. The dx square minus y square orbital contains 2 nodal planes which are perpendicular to each other, and it forms an angle of 45 degree with respect to x and y axis. dz square orbitals do not contain any nodal plane. The 5 orbitals which are present in the d sublevel will have the same energy in the ground state. After these orbitals split up, they are going to have lower and higher energy based on the splitting. But when they are at the ground level, that is the lowest energy level, all the 5 d orbitals are going to have the same energy. So this was all about the shapes of atomic orbitals. Let us now revise the orbital distribution in the first 4 shells. First is the K shell, and we know that the principal quantum number, which is denoted by n, is equal to 1 for the K shell. So the number of subshells present is equal to 1. So azimuthal quantum number for K shell will be L is equal to 0. Since it is L is equal to 0, it is 1s. Because we know for S subshell, the value of L is equal to 0. Now, in order to calculate the magnetic quantum number, we use the formula 2L plus 1, and after substitution, we get the answer as equal to 1. So, the magnetic quantum number for shell K is equal to 1. Hence, M will correspond to a value of 0. That means only one value. For L shell, we know that the principal quantum number n is equal to 2. Hence the number of subshells will be 2. Now, since it is 2, it will have two azimuthal quantum numbers, that is L is equal to 0 and L is equal to 1. Now, we know when the value of L is equal to 0, it is S subshell, and when L is equal to 1, it is P subshell. Now, why I have written 2S and 2P here? Because the principal quantum number n is equal to 2. Now, in order to calculate the magnetic quantum number, we will use the formula 2L plus 1. So, where the azimuthal quantum number L is equal to 0, we get the value as equal to 1. So, we need to have only one value of magnetic quantum number, and so M will be equal to 0. But where L is equal to 1, after substituting in the formula 2L plus 1, we get the answer as equal to 3. Hence, we need to have 3 values for magnetic quantum number. So, M will be equal to -1, 0 and +1. Moving on to the M shell, we know that the value of principal quantum number n is equal to 3. So, the number of subshells will be equal to 3. So, now we are going to have 3 azimuthal quantum numbers, that is L is equal to 0, L is equal to 1 and L is equal to 2. Now, we know that when L is equal to 0, it corresponds to the S subshell. When L is equal to 1, it corresponds to P, and when L is equal to 2, it corresponds to D subshell. The reason it is written as 3S, 3P and 3D is because the principal quantum number n is equal to 3. Again, we have to follow the same rule, that is using the formula 2L plus 1. So, where L is equal to 0, we get the value of M as 1. So, we need to have only one magnetic quantum number which will be equal to 0. Where L is equal to 1, after solving we get the answer as equal to 3. So, we need to have 3 magnetic quantum numbers. So, it will be -1, 0 and +1. Where L is equal to 2, we get the answer as equal to 5. So, here we need to have 5 quantum numbers. So, those will be -2, -1, 0, +1 and +2. For the n level, the principal quantum number n is equal to 4. So, here we are going to have 4 sub-levels. So, the azimuthal quantum number will have 4 values, that is L is equal to 0, L is equal to 1, L is equal to 2 and L is equal to 3. The same pattern follows. We know for S sub-level, the azimuthal quantum number is equal to 0. When L is equal to 1, it corresponds to P. When L is equal to 2, it corresponds to D. And L is equal to 3, it corresponds to the F subshell. The reason for writing 4S, 4P, 4D and 4F here is the principal quantum number which corresponds to a value of 4. After using the formula 2L plus 1, when azimuthal quantum number is equal to 0, we get the value as equal to 1. So, the magnetic quantum number M will be equal to 0. When L is equal to 1, the answer we get is equal to 3. So, we need to have 3 values of magnetic quantum numbers, which are -1, 0 and +1. For L is equal to 2, the answer comes to 5. So, we need to have 5 values of M, which will correspond to -2, -1, 0, +1 and +2. And when the azimuthal quantum number is equal to 3, we get the answer as equal to 7. So, now we need to have 7 values of the magnetic quantum number, which are -3, -2, -1, 0, +1, +2 and +3 respectively. So, this is how you do the calculation when you are asked to calculate the magnetic quantum numbers, azimuthal quantum numbers or the principal quantum numbers.